Running for office, I'm always fundraising. So go to bowmanforcongress.com. Go to bowmanforcongress.com. Check out what we're doing. Click the donate button. Toss a couple of bucks. Greatly appreciate it.
That should maybe be the lead.
That should be the lead. Exactly.
Hi again, everybody, and welcome back to the Dr. Z and J-Dub podcast presented by Provenzano's Deli and the Charger Athletics Fund. J.W. Stewart, along with Dr. Z, Shay and Zenger, our UNH AD. And our guest today, joining us right off the top of the program, is Jamaal Bowman, Congressman, longtime Charger, former Charger, graduated from UNH in 1999, was a member of the football team here. And Jamaal is going to tell us about his story, his path to the U.S. House of Representatives. Jamaal, first of all, thanks for joining us here on the Dr. Z and J-Dub podcast. How are you?
Well, it's good to be on with you. Thank you so much for having me.
I feel underdressed, but I feel okay.
My bad, man. My bad. This is like work clothes, and I'm in DC today. So this is the look. This is the get up.
I'm lacking the backdrop. You know, you've got flags. J-Dub has the tree. I have campus, so I can't besmirch that. That's a good look, right?
Yeah, we're not short on flags here at the Capitol. So when you come to the Capitol, there are flags pretty much everywhere. But listen, you know, it's good to be here. It's good to be smiling and laughing. It's been a tough year for so many on a personal level. Good to be here during the holiday season, you know, reflection time, and hopefully praying that, you know, 2022 starts off on a much better foot.
Well said, Jamaal. Let's wind everything back for everybody who's meeting you for the first time, our viewers and our listeners. Tell them and tell us about your upbringing and your path to UNH.
Sure. So I'm born and raised in New York City, in the East Harlem, Upper East Side section of Manhattan. Went to public schools my entire life in a very diverse community. In about end of 10th grade, I moved out of the city to finish high school in Sayreville, New Jersey. And that's where I was introduced to football. That's when I started playing football. I didn't play Pop Warner, didn't play middle school or high school. Didn't play in high school in New York City. I played when I got to Sayreville, fell in love with it right away, had an amazing coach, Sal Mistretta. And I didn't play junior year because I was ineligible because I didn't do well academically when I was in New York. So I had to wait till my senior year, played senior year, did well, was like second team All-State. And we went to the second round of the playoffs that year. Following that, went to Potomac State College in West Virginia, which is like, you know, kid from the city, you might as well be on another planet. I thought it was cool to try to go out of state, but I didn't realize West Virginia was, you know, a lot more rural. So I left Potomac State pretty after one semester because it was just not for me. And I went home and didn't really, you know what I was going to do next. And a friend of mine from Sayreville got recruited to UNH. And they saw me on film as well. And they asked, you know, who's that other guy on film? And he said, that's Jamaal Bowman. If you can get him here, I'll definitely come to UNH. So they called me and I was like, hell yeah, like, let's go. Like, I didn't even, you know, where do I sign? And started there in 95, man. And that's how I ended up in West Haven, Connecticut, but ended up in West Haven. And had a great experience there. And it was great because, you know, Yale is not too far away. And then you got Southern Connecticut. So it's like a lot of colleges around. So it was pretty cool. And I studied sports management when I was there.
Just for the sake of the viewers, what position or positions did you play in high school? And then what did you play at UNH?
So I played defensive tackle in high school. And that was mainly because I was new to the game and didn't really understand how the game worked. But I was, you know, had good size and good speed and, you know, I wasn't, you know, afraid of some contact. So the coach was like, we're going to put you at defensive tackle. And I asked him, I said, what is that? And he said, just tackle everyone and find the guy with the ball. When I got to UNH, initially they had me a Mike linebacker, but that didn't work out. So I moved to Rover, and I was pretty much a second string Rover my entire career.
After you
UNH.
graduated UNH, Jamaal, what did you do? Where did you go?
I started teaching. I came back to the city and, graduated in May, started looking for jobs right away in corporate America, because I had the sports management degree, and corporate America just wasn't a good fit. And I told myself mentally that by September, I wanted to have a job because you're on the school year clock, right? So you're thinking by September, you got to be doing something. You can't be doing nothing. So I was like, by September, I got to have a job. And one of my friends suggested that I check out the Department of Education. So I went to a school district in the Bronx. Interview went well, and I got hired. So I started teaching elementary school right out of college. Initially, I was a math teacher for kids in grades kindergarten through fourth grade. Now, you may think teaching kindergarten math is easy. The content is easy, but 35-year-olds in a classroom is not easy at all.
Did you stay in elementary? Did you go to middle school, high school? Did you get into administration?
So I stayed in elementary for 5 years. Okay. I was a math teacher, then a fourth grade teacher, then a crisis intervention teacher. I did that for 5 years. At the same time, I was working on a master's degree in school counseling. So once I got certified in school counseling, I transitioned to work at a high school for arts and technology near Lincoln Center in Manhattan in the MLK building, if you know the area. I was there as a dean of students under my guidance license for 3 years, and I also taught some classes. And there are a lot of schools in New York City with some challenges, and a lot of kids with a lot of challenges. And I felt that there needed to be some changes. So I actually wrote a proposal and opened up a school in September 2009. I opened up a public school in the Bronx called the Cornerstone Academy for Social Action. So I was the founding principal, and I served as principal for 10 and a half years at a middle school in the Bronx before running for Congress.
What was the impetus behind it?
Social action. So just making sure our curriculum was rooted in the experiences of Black and brown kids and kids who come from low-income communities and kids who come from what we call red line communities. So these are communities that have been systematically underinvested in for long periods of time. Think of the New Deal, right? When Roosevelt passed the New Deal, we built the suburbs, right, and built the American middle class. But what a lot of people don't know is like African Americans weren't allowed to benefit from those loans when the New Deal was passed, and they were forced to remain in public housing. And because simply they were African American, those communities were what we call red line, which means they were devalued. So a lot of public schools in places like New York City and other urban areas exist right next to these underfunded communities. So it's ensuring our kids are aware of all of that, because when you have that knowledge, you can be empowered to transform your circumstances. So as a school of social action, we were always about empowering kids with their own history so that they can transform their own circumstances.
Is that how you decided to get into politics, and why you decided to get into politics?
Pretty much, man. When you see, our system is supposed to be fair and just for everyone, regardless of background and zip code. When you work in challenging schools, you see the impacts of poverty. You see the food insecurity. You see the housing insecurity. You see some of the violence that permeates violent communities. The thing that was most heartbreaking for me personally was seeing the mental health challenges and learning about the trauma of poverty and how it impacts a person's mental health. So we would have kids as young as 11 years old presenting with suicidal ideation, which is something that's very challenging. Now, that doesn't only happen in communities with poverty, and that doesn't only happen in Black and brown communities, as we all know. Mental health is a challenge everywhere. But yeah, seeing that, and not really seeing elected officials at any level really knowing how to talk about this stuff. I'm sure they cared, but really connecting it to policy and talking about it in an interconnected way. I didn't really see that. And I knew that there were bad policy solutions historically that created this mess. So I knew there could be good policy solutions that would fix it. And that was one main reason why I decided to run.
Tell us, take us behind the scenes with whatever discussions you may have had with your wife, your family, trusted friends and colleagues to make that jump from education into politics, and what went into that decision.
Crazy, man. My friends tease me that I may have some CTE from my UNH playing days. I hope that's not the case. Right before running for office, I completed a doctorate in education leadership. Very humbling and a real privilege to do that. And after that, I just got this urge to want to do something else and theoretically have a larger platform to talk about all I had learned and experienced over 20 years. So I started talking to friends and family about the possibility. And, thank God I have people who were supportive who was like, hell yeah, absolutely. You should do it. Yes, and yes, and yes. Everyone except my wife. She did not want me to do it, but she never actually said no. So I kind of took that as a yes, which is, not really, I don't advise people listening to this to do that. So I took it as a yes and I ran. I was lucky to be endorsed by a strong organization from the beginning, an organization called the Justice Democrats. So they endorsed us early and they helped us get other endorsements and supports along the way. She married a school principal. She didn't marry a congressperson or a future right? So she ain't signed up for it. And it was some really, really tough times, man. Once we got towards the end of the campaign, for whatever reason, she started feeling brighter and happier. And I guess she sensed that we had a shot to win. And then we ultimately won. And after the campaign, when we went out to dinner and we talked about it, we finally had the conversation after we won. She said she was 90% sure I was crazy and 90% sure I was going to get my ass kicked. Like not just lose, get destroyed. So I'm glad we were able to prove her wrong. And now, and let me say this, you didn't ask this, but I think this is an important point. Winning was just the beginning. Now I got to do the job. And when I'm here in DC, my family's back home in Yonkers, so now she has to be a single mom 50% of the time. Right. And that's, again, she ain't signed up for any of this. So I can't give her enough love and credit and shout outs and all of that, man, because she's adjusting now to actually being the wife of a member of Congress.
Your first year been like in Congress, Jamaal, not only for you, but your family?
It's like the intensity of training camp constantly or the intensity of like fourth quarter or crunch time in a game constantly. That's what it is. With votes, with advocacy, with issues, with constituent services, with decision making, it's just very intense all the time. I was sworn in January 3rd, and January 6th we had the first attack on the U.S. Capitol since the War of 1812. We have members of Congress who, continue to fan the flames of stuff that we are trying to get away from, right? Like we're trying to do better than we were. This is not Jim Crow South, right? This is not, those days. So when you have members of Congress, calling like a Muslim member a terrorist just because they're Muslim, when you have people talking about civil war, when you have people saying, if there's a vaccine mandate, you got a Second Amendment right, and we may have to take up on, like, there are people in Congress advocating levels of violence that, we would hope we would be better than. But unfortunately, we democracy is, it's a contact sport. If you're not engaged in it, consistently trying to be better, then you could see the degradation of and collapse of societies. I mean, there's historical record of this, right? So it's been intense, but it's also been a privilege. I represent a district that hasn't really been represented that fully represented that well in a very long time. We're a majority minority district, And for people of color to see someone who looks and sounds like them and also, aligns with their issues, it's really empowering to them, as well as progressives as well. So it's intense, but I love it, and I love being here.
And I don't want to put you on the spot. Do you see this being something you'd like to do for a long period of time, or?
No, it's not. It's not on the. Well, here's the thing. My predecessor was here 31 years.
Yeah.
And, we don't know what God has in store for any of us, right? So you kind of just do your job and try to do it to the best of your ability. I think many people stay too long in this job.
Mm-hmm.
And many people remain with a status quo that isn't really transformative for too many Americans. When you look at levels of inequality and other issues.
Running out of time here, Jamaal. So last question from me. 'Tis the season for hope. What's your message for hope for our country that oftentimes seems more divided than united?
Turn off the news media sometimes, okay? Because it's clickbait. It's like East Coast, West Coast beef. I don't know if you all remember that. It's the same thing. It's like they promote the conflict and people tune in. It's not that bad. It really isn't. I want to point to 3 very specific things. The president ran on something called the Build Back Better agenda. And we are 2/3 of the way there. The American Rescue Plan, which was rent relief, shots in arms, lifting 50% of children out of poverty, historic investments in public schools. That was part 1. Part 2, the infrastructure bill, recently passed. Okay, we're talking about historic investments in infrastructure that's been crumbling over several decades, and that's 100 years old. That's passed. The next big one is the Build Back Better Act, which is on pace to pass before the end of the year. And potentially voting rights legislation, which is also key because unfortunately, there are people trying to suppress the right to vote. And if people can't vote, you don't have a democracy. Build Back Better will pass by the end of the year, God willing, or soon into the new year, and voting rights along with that. We see the president delivering on some campaign promises, putting money in people's pockets, rebuilding infrastructure, and restarting the economy. Record job growth in the first year of any presidency in U.S. history. See, stuff like that gets lost. 6 million jobs in first year. Record in U.S. history, lowest number of unemployment claims just a week or 2 ago. So just encouraging people to continue to be safe out there because this global pandemic continues to mutate. We have a new variant. So please be safe. Encourage friends and family to get vaccinated if they aren't. I'm sorry, but I had to say that because that's what's going to keep us safe. And in addition to that, it's not just vaccines, it's masks and it's testing. It all still needs to happen until we're out of this. But Biden is, he's not sexy, for lack of a better term, and not exciting, but I think he's a steady leader that we need right now as we grow as a country.
Your favorite UNH memory before you go?
But my specialty was blowing up the fullback on the toss sweep. Yeah. And I just remember a toss sweep coming at me. I was on the left side, toss sweep coming at me, and I just completely destroyed this fullback on this play. And we won the game. I forget the team. And that's a memory. I have others that stick out, but that's one that sticks out because there's no better feeling than if you play defense, all you're thinking about is when you're going to get the big hit. Like, when is the biggest hit going to happen during the game? And then there's one game I got this fullback very well. So that's the memory. I need to remember the team so I could tell a better story, but that was the memory.
For your time, that's Congressman Jamaal Bowman, UNH class of 99, former football player, and now representing the New York 16th District, which includes the Northern Bronx and parts of Westchester County, including Yonkers, where he and his family live, New Rochelle and Mount Vernon. Jamaal, thanks.
But thank you so much. Peace and love. We'll talk soon.
Right.
Thanks, Jamaal. Merry Christmas and happy holidays to you and your
Merry
family.
Christmas. You know, he took a path of he majored in sports management, ended up in education. What I find really unique is he went into elementary education, which is really, really rare for young men. And then he matriculated up through counseling and administration and became a principal. And then the story about, I can just imagine telling your wife you're going to quit your job and run for office, do the job. For young people, so often we joke about, well, I want to be president for a day, or you want to have a certain job for a day. Then you have to do the job. And that job causes him to be away from home and significant amount of stress. So I can only imagine what she went through and what they still deal with as they're trying to make this thing work.
Yeah, I mean, Jamaal's done a lot of amazing things in his life and continues to do so. One of the things we didn't really get a whole lot of time to dig into, but hopefully the next time we have him on, he kind of glossed over it, and that's he created a school. Yeah. I don't know how many people create a school. He created a middle school. That's unbelievable, Z.
I'm thinking of a book called Outliers that I love, written by Malcolm Gladwell, and that piece right there could be a chapter in it.
Been a great season 2, and we thank everyone for tuning in. As always, we thank Provenzano's Deli and the Charger Athletics Fund, our producer Broccoli Rob Thompson, who's with us most of the time in Florida, although during the season, the football season, he was with us a lot of times in studio, which was great. And Merry Christmas to Rob and his family, John Mays, our associate AD and executive producer, and Dr. Z, to you and your family as well. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, and I'll see you in January.
We'll see you soon.
That wraps up season 2 for the Dr. Z and J-Dub podcast. You were a former fullback, were you not?
No, I was an option quarterback, which is just a slow running back that can kind of throw. I had my teeth rattled more than once.